Hello everyone. This video will be an introduction to the Ruby programming language. We're gonna go through how to do a print statement, print hello world using Ruby statements. Then we're gonna go through numbers, integers and floats, and basic mathematical operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and the modulo operations, and then we'll wrap up by talking about variables in Ruby. So I assume you already have Ruby installed in your machine. I have my own Ruby installed here. I'm using Ubuntu 14.04. I'm running Ruby 1.9.3. The version shouldn't be a matter. You can use any version. It's probably now in Ruby 2.3, as it says here in the Wikipedia page, as at the time of the recording. So it doesn't matter if you're using 2.3 because we're gonna talk about basic elements of the language that's available, should be available, no matter if I'm 1.9 or 2.3. And so Ruby is a really nice programming language in my opinion. It's really easy to learn, very simple. It was created 1995 by Yukihiro Matsumoto in Japan. It's a really nice language. It got really popular in recent years with the advent of Ruby on Rails, a framework to develop web applications. That's how Ruby got really popularized. And yeah, so let's jump into it. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to use the Ruby interpreter to go through all these examples, and that's called IRB, so you should have that installed. So what is it gonna do is I'm gonna type in commands, and then it's gonna give me an output. So mind you that Ruby is an object-oriented programming language, so literally everything in Ruby is an object, and there's always a return value for whatever statement you give. So keep those two things in mind: object-oriented, everything is an object, and there's always a return value to everything you do, every function, every method. Okay, so let's start out knowing how to display a message to the screen, to the console. And to do that, we're gonna do the classic hello world program. So in Ruby you can use put s space followed by the whatever you want to display under quotes. Okay, I'm gonna use double quotes in this case. So there we go. When I do put s, it's gonna display hello world, and then it's gonna break a line, and this thing right here, that is the return value of the expression I just executed. So you're always gonna get this line here as I'm doing the interpreter, and in this case the put s method returns nil. Nil, it's like something that kind of means nothing in Ruby, and in other languages it's called null, but in Ruby is nil. So you don't have to know exactly what it means right now, but just know that the put s method returns nil. That'll be really useful later as we compare put s with another statement called p. So this is how you do it in Ruby. You can also use single quotes. It's the same thing in this case, but there's some differences between using double quotes and single quotes, and that deals with using string interpolation and escaping characters. We don't have to know about that right now, but just know there's a slight difference. But as long as you don't have that kind of stuff going on and you just have characters, strings, it's okay to use either one. So let's try another statement. There's also print. Print is kind of similar to putS, except it does not add a new line character to the end of the string. So let's see what we get. Do you see we got hello world, and immediately after that we got the nil return value. There wasn't a line break between hello world and nil. So that's the difference between putS and print. PutS adds a new line character to the end of the string, while as print does not. And keep in mind that both putS and print return nil. Okay, and just if you're curious, the new line character is called \n. You get used to that as you learn the language. So \n means a new line character. So basically, it breaks the line. So you can change this to whatever you want and say any sentence. This is, and it should be print out to the console. So try it out in your own and do your own examples. Now, last thing I would like to talk about is about the P statement. So P is kind of like putS and print, but it's different in that P will actually return you whatever you pass to it, what it actually means in the Ruby world. So it returns literally the object itself as the kind of data structure it is. Notice I say P hello world and it gives me back hello world with quotes. So this means hello world is a string because there are quotes here. So P returns whatever. It's kind of print out, but it also adds what type of data structure it is. So you're literally printing the raw thing, the raw string here. I'm just gonna use another one. Single quotes is okay, doesn't matter, but still you get here hey with double quotes, meaning this hey whatever is a string. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that using P will actually return the object itself as the return value. So if you P hey, you're gonna get the return value of hey, whereas print and putS actually returns nil. This will be really important as you debug your future programs, because you might find yourself not trying to debug something and then you need to kind of know what's going inside some variables. So you often find yourself Ping the variables, Ping the value of those variables. So keep that in mind. P is a great tool for debugging. And also keep in mind putS and print return nil, so if you're trying to use those in your debugging process, you might get some nil there. So best to use P so you actually get the actual value. Alright, let's clear the screen. Let's talk about numbers now. So let's talk about integers. Integers are just numbers that do not have a decimal point. For example, 7, 4, 3, and so on. In contrast with floating point numbers, floats, as they're called, have a decimal number. For example, 4.3, 4.9, and so on. So, integers versus floats. Okay, so now let's check it out. Let's see some mathematical operations we can do. We can do addition. This should be really intuitive. 3 plus 4, 7. We can do subtraction. 8 minus 3 should be 5. We can do multiplication. 2 times 4 should be 8. And then division should be 3. Okay? But now there's another kind of operation called the module that gives you the remainder of division. Whereas 9 divided by 3, for example, will give you 3 as the quotient. The remainder can be obtained using the module operator, which is like the percent. In this case, it's going to be 0, right? Because 9 divided into 3 doesn't yield any remainder. But that will come in handy when you're doing things that are not divided, split equally. But for that, before we talk about that, let's just consider integers versus floating point numbers in the case of division. So in Ruby, if you do like something like 7 divided by 2, what would you get? In this case, Ruby will do integer division because both operands here are integers. So 7 divided by 2 will give you 3 because that's integer division. In integer division, there's no decimal point. You just get a quotient and whatever remainder that is discarded. So 7 divided by 2, we can multiply 3 times 2 gives 6, and therefore you get 3 as a quotient and the remainder of 1, which is discarded. Now if you want to get that remainder, you can use the module. So that will give you 1 because you divide 7 divided by 2, that's 3 with remainder 1, so you get 1. So you might be thinking, so how do we get the right result, which is 3.5, right? So to do that, you have to force one of the operands to be a floating point. So what you could do is say 7.0 divided by 2, and because 7.0 is a float, the operation will be taken as a floating point operation, floating point division, and that's 3.5. So it doesn't matter which operand you put the decimal point, as long as one of them is a floating point number, the operation will be floating point division. Alright, and since I said right in the beginning of the video that everything is a class in Ruby, let's check out what the classes for each of these numbers are. There's a method called class that you can call on each of these. You can just say 7.class, and that will give you the class for the number 7. So 7 is actually an object of the class fixNum. Now 7.0 is an object of the class float, which makes sense. FixNums is kind of one of the classes for integers in Ruby. Alright. And in case you're wondering about strings, you can also get their type. Hello with quotes, that's an object of class string. Don't worry if you don't quite understand what an object means right now. This is supposed to be an introductory video, and we're just introducing you the concepts, exposing you to the terms of the language. Eventually you will be you get to understand what these all mean. So for now, just try out these examples on your own and see if you can get an idea of what's going on with Ruby. Okay, now let's talk about variables. So variables are used to store information. The way to do set a variable in Ruby is pretty simple. You say the variable name on the left hand side, and then followed by an equal sign, followed by the variable value. So for example, if I want to store the age, my age or somebody's age, I can say age, that's the variable name, space, equal space, and then I give the integer for the age. I'm gonna say 36, and then we can use that value later on in your program by just saying age. In this case, I'm just gonna say age, and the Ruby interpreter IRB is gonna give me back the value that's stored in age. So indeed it returns 36. You can also do mathematical operations and any kind of manipulations on that variable's value. You can say, like, for example, if you want to display double the age, whatever is stored in age, you can say age times 2, and that's 72. You can divide it divided by 2, 18. But still, the age variable will be unchanged because all we did is just do an operation that doesn't really set the actual value of the variable. But if you really wanted to set it to a new value, you would have to say, to give an assignment operation again, like age equals age times 2. For example, if you want to permanently double the age stored in the age variable. That gives us back 72, and if we look at the value stored in age, that should be 72 now, no longer 36, because we have redefined the value for age. Alright, so now going back to the print statement, you can, because I'm here in the Ruby interpreter, everything I type will give me, the interpreter will give me something back. But typically when you run your Ruby program as a standalone file, you will not get anything back. Typically it will be everything silent unless you say it's so, unless you explicitly use a print statement, a put-as statement, a p or whatever. So let's work with that. So let's try to display the value of age. So we can say put-as age, and that should be 72. You see, it prints 72 to the console and returns nil, because remember, put-as always returns nil. You can try print, and remember, print does not add a new line to the end of the line. So 72 followed by nil, return value on the same line. Also notice that if you run your program as its own script, you will not get explicit return values displayed on the console as it is right here. This is done by the IRB interpreter just for convenience, but you will not be seeing these in the actual script execution. Alright, you can also do a P. You can okay, so just to wrap up this video, I would like to talk about string interpolation. And I mentioned it in the beginning, and that was like one of the things that's different between using single quotes and double quotes. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you use double quotes, it allows you to use string interpolation, meaning that you can type in the variable name within the double quotes, and that variable name will be substituted with the actual value of the variable. Whereas if you use a single quote, that and you try to refer to a variable's value inside, it will not get substituted. It will be displayed as is. So to illustrate that example, let's say I want to display a message like, hello, you are blah 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 years old, and I want to replace blah 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 with the value of the age that's stored in the variable age. So to do that within the double quotes, all I have to do is put a pound sign followed by braces, and inside the braces I'm going to put the variable name. So this is called string interpolation. So whatever is stored in the variable age will be substituted here with the actual value. So we expect this to say, hello, you are 72 years old. Here it is. Now let's try it out with single quotes to see if there's anything different. Do you see what happened here? I use single quotes and I get, hello, you are age years old. So with single quotes, you cannot string interpolate. It just displays every character as it is, as it was written. No substitutions whatsoever. You can also do operations within these braces. You don't have to just put the variable name. You can do, like, for example, age times 2, and that should be 144, right? Hello, you are 144 years old. And I need double quotes, right? To string interpolate and substitute the value. There you go. Mind you that this will not change the value in age because it's not an assignment operator. It's just some statement that we put there. So age is still 72, but here we just put it times 2. You can do whatever you want there. You can play around and do all kinds of things. You can, let's make it a floating point division, so it's actually going to give us a decimal and not discard any remainders. Hello, you are 24.0 years old. Let's say age, let's remove age and put exactly just a number, for example 8. We expect if it had no decimal point, that would be integer division, right? 8 divided by 3, 2 times 3, 6, remainder 2. So, but that's not really ideally what we want, so we force it to be floating point division using a decimal point in either of the operands. So that's going to give you are 2.666 and so on years old. Okay, so I hope you have found this video useful. Let's just review a few things. So you can display messages to the console using put s, print, and p. So put s and print are similar, but print does not add a new line character to the end of the line, and both put s and print return nil, but p will return you the actual variable value. Okay, now you can do all the basic mathematical operations in Ruby: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and module. Module will give you the remainder of division. You can there are floats and there are integers. Integers don't have decimal values. There's no dot, decimal point, and integers. If you divide two integers in Ruby, that will be integer division. There's no implicit conversion unless you say so. So 7 divided by 2 will be 3. And if you want to force it to be floating point division, make one of the operands a floating point number using a dot. Okay. And we talked about variables in the end. You can store values in what are called variables. Very easy to set a variable. Just say variable name followed by an equal sign, and then the value you want to assign to it. Doesn't have to be specifically an integer. It could be anything, floating point, or even a string. And you can display its value just by referring to it. Here I mean IRB showed it's going to give me back that value. Typically you would use it inside a put as or any other statement. And you can interpolate that and give a message using string interpolation. You can combine strings with variable values. And that has to be within double quotes because single quotes does not allow you to do string interpolation. Alright. So to redefine a variable, you can just use assignment operator again, and it should be okay. And as a final note, in Ruby, you don't need to specify the variable type as in other languages. Ruby is pretty high level and dynamic, so it will adjust itself to whatever the type of the value is. So don't worry about setting the type. So I hope you found this video to be useful. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked my videos, please subscribe. Leave any comments. If you have any questions, I really appreciate your watching, and have a good day and keep on learning. Thank you.